How's it going, everyone? Yosef back here with another video, and I hope you're having an amazing week so far. Today we have the 2023 Subaru Impreza WRX, and honestly this is really exciting for me because since I was a kid I always saw these driving around and their big brothers, the STIs, and I just thought they were so cool. I mean, look at them. They've got so much excitement in the design, and I thought this would be really interesting to learn more about. Every time I walked by one though, I always looked inside and they kind of looked a little cheap. So from the outside they looked really cool, but I always wondered, what do people really see in these cars? The thing is, these cars have a cult-like following. People are obsessed with them, and they've been featured in the Fast and Furious movies a long time ago, and so I thought it would be really great to understand what people love about this car. So today we are going to find out. Well, for starters, it's a really affordable performance car with an amazing rally-inspired heritage, and the only one in its price bracket that offers all-wheel drive as standard. Prices start at around $32,500 Canadian and go all the way up to $44,000 for the top trim, and that's a lot of car for the price, especially in today's car market. The look of the WRX is classic and had been overhauled from the previous generation, but it stayed true to its design. And this new generation got a lot of hate for its looks when it first came out, and I understand why, but it's really grown on me over time, especially in black and blue. The front end is my favorite view. You have these really slick headlights, a tasteful grille, and the muscular hood scoop that to me just makes the car look so exciting. I mean, look at that. It's practically a muscle car. The side profile is nice, but the plastic cladding around the wheel wells were really controversial. And that to me is something that is going to be a love it or hate it thing about the car. But if we look at it, it actually has some cool design elements to it. You've got these sort of honeycomb features in there, and you actually have some functional vents coming off the side. Now, when you go to the back of the car and you take a look at the rear bumper, that is another area of where the controversy sort of stemmed for the design of this car, because if you take a look at it, it just sticks out really far. It's almost like a picnic bench that you can sit on and have a spot of lunch. That being said, the taillights are really cool, and if you take a look at them, they've got this sort of 3D effect, and they almost look like they have these little jewels in them, which to me is kind of cool. And of course, you've got that Subaru logo sort of built in there. I don't know if it'll come up on camera, but just some small little details that you've got in the taillights that add a little bit of excitement to them. And if we take a step a little bit lower down, you'll notice you've got really nice exhaust tips, and yes, they're real. And you've got 4 of them, which to me just adds to the sporty credentials of this car. So overall, this new generation of WRX looks pretty good. It's definitely a modern take on the previous generation, and it does look like an upgrade and a more modern version of it. It's up to you if you really like the design or not, because there are some things that have caused a lot of drama for it, but overall, in my opinion, none of those things are deal breakers. And to be honest with you, the overall package and proportions of the car, they look really nice. And compared to the older one, I think it's definitely tasteful, and it's a nice modern upgrade to it. On the inside of the WRX, there definitely is some new technology, and it feels much more modern than the last one. But that doesn't really say much, because the last generation felt really old and uninspired, so the bar wasn't set very high. But if you take a look at the materials, it's kind of a mixed bag. There's nothing that really screams premium over here. You do have some stitching just along the doors. You've got some nice accents over here on the buttons for the windows. There is some fake carbon fiber over here on the door pull area, and you've got some nice sort of chrome accents as you go through the vehicle. But really, I think the most impressive part of the interior is the fact that you can get it in a manual, and it's got a manual handbrake, which is something that's super rare these days. The Alcantara on the seats is also really nice, and I do like that you've got WRX stitched into the headrests, but otherwise the interior feels relatively simple, and it is very, very dark. And that's one of the things that always frustrates me in cars nowadays. I love color and I like having a little bit more excitement in the interior, but overall it's not bad, and I think would be something you could get used to when you drive it. Now moving on to the gauge cluster and the center infotainment screen, I'm just going to turn the car on because, well, you don't have a whole lot going on in the middle over here, but you do have a little bit of a digital gauge cluster over there. I do like the analog gauges. I know that's a little old, but for me, that's still something that's kind of cool. And when you turn the car on and it sort of sweeps from one side to the other, that's something that I always really loved with some performance cars. And if we take a look at the infotainment screen, for example, it's really big and it does look like it fits in with the modern car, but the infotainment system itself is a little bit slow and it doesn't have sort of the ease of use that you would find in sort of an iPad or some sort of tablet that you normally have. But I do really have to give credit to Subaru for giving us a volume knob and some physical buttons here. I know these look like they're part of the screen, but they're actual physical buttons. So when you want to change the temperature, you want to put on the front defroster, or if you want to put on the rear defroster, you know, you've got those dedicated buttons built into the infotainment screen, and you also have some dedicated areas here on the screen that allow you to change settings within the infotainment system really, really easily. So, you know, when it comes to the climate control, something that you use all the time, you have a really easy way of getting to it, which to me is really nice. And of course, the buttons that you've got sort of built into the screen, the apps, they are really easy to touch. You don't really have to take your eyes off the road too much. It just would be nice if it was higher resolution, and it would be nice if it just looked a little bit more modern and was a little less laggy. Other than that, this car comes with two transmissions. You can either get a CVT or the 6-speed manual, which we've got over here, which would definitely be my preference. But I think the really great thing about this is it gives you the opportunity to have anybody drive this car. It's not one that is exclusive to people who just know how to drive stick, and it widens the audience. And I think for performance cars, it always is nice to have that ability to just share the love with other people who don't necessarily know how to drive stick. And if we take a look at just the passenger side, we've got obviously a really nice glove box. We've got some storage here where I've got the cup holders and the keys, and you've got obviously an opening armrest over here with some storage. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot to say in the front of the car. Everything is pretty straightforward as you'd expect, but you also have the addition of a standard size sunroof. Moving on to the backseat area of the WRX, you have the same materials that you found in the front, the same stitching over here, the sort of fake carbon fiber. You've got a lot of room in the back seat, so if you're carrying around a family, this would definitely work, and you can enjoy that with the kids. And another really awesome feature that I wouldn't expect in a car of this price range is the heated seats for the back. Most cars in this price range only have them in the front, but here you've got the heated seats in the back, and you've got two stages of that. And of course, you've got some charge ports over here if you wanted to use USB, although they aren't the USB-C, which would just help with the more modernizing of this car. But otherwise, you have the same sort of Alcantara feeling in the back, and you've got an armrest that you can fold down, of course, with a couple more cup holders. So overall, a really practical and spacious car in this segment. To be honest with you, my biggest complaint about the interior of this car is just how plasticky everything feels. I wish that not everything was super scratchy black plastic. There is some soft touch material over here, but it's the same thing in the front, and I just wish for the price they would have jazzed things up a little bit. This is sort of a soft touch material up here, soft touch down here, but as you go a little further down, you've got a lot of these scratchy black plastics all over the interior of the car. This is a little soft over here, but you've got some sort of cheaper feeling plastic up here. Even the steering wheel is really nice, but again, a lot of plastic everywhere, and that's something that's not uncommon for cars in this price range, but they didn't really do much in terms of hiding it. And I really wish they would have just had a few more colors or something, a different type of material in the center console area, just to make it a little bit more exciting to look at. Now, if we bring ourselves to the back of the WRX, first of all, kudos to them for giving us a nice little lip spoiler up here. That is always nice to have. But if we open the trunk just under the Subaru logo, you'll notice that you've got a really spacious trunk. There's a ton of space in here. And of course, because it's a sedan, you've got a really nice deep section here that you can use. You can also fold the seats down if you'd like to give you a little bit more space. You'll see there's sort of a 60-40 split that you can use, and so you can put things all the way through. I do wish there was a pass-through like they have in the Golf R and in some other vehicles in this class, so you don't have to fold down all the seats, but you could also open up a little area there to put in some skis or longer items. But overall, it is a really spacious trunk area, and so this would be a great vehicle to have as a family or for just doing the shopping run. Okay, now let's go for a bit of a drive. Now, to start off, this is a really easy car to drive. There isn't too much power, it doesn't feel overwhelming or scary to get into and just start getting along with. But there are a few things that are a little frustrating in the little time that I've had so far driving it. Number one, I don't like the turn signal. I know that sounds really petty, but it's very much like the experience that we had with the Rivian, where it kind of goes into the center position after you've turned it on. And I know that's a very small thing, but I really like it when you can see that the turn signal is physically on, because there's a lot of times you turn it on and forget about it, and it's nice to know that it's in position. So that is one thing that I don't really like right off the bat, but otherwise it's a really comfortable car. The seats are great, they hold you nicely, it's not too grabby, and for a performance car, it actually feels really nice. The suspension is quite soft, so you don't have to worry about it bouncing you around too much. And I find that the manual driving experience is actually really great as well. The bite point is really easy to find, the shift knob is super easy to use, and of course, I really love that we have the manual handbrake. That is something that really nobody does anymore, and I gotta give a huge credit to Subaru for keeping that in. So overall, as a driving experience, it's pretty easy and it's good. It's not super quiet in here like you'd find in, maybe the Golf GTI, but relative to a Civic Si or something like that, I think it's pretty well on par. Again, you find that everything that you interact with is really easy and relatively intuitive, which is something that I really appreciate in a car like this, because we don't have a lot of sort of fun cars for the family mid sort of $30,000-$40,000 range. And so it's nice that we have this option and they haven't cut it completely, which is what they did with the more powerful version, the STI. And that to me is unfortunate, but beggars can't be choosers. We got to enjoy what we have over here. Okay, there is one thing that I wanted to talk about that's not specific to the driving experience, but I think is a really important message overall. And that is influence. A lot of times we are influenced by things all around us. Social media, our friends' opinions, things like that. But the challenge is that sometimes we form an opinion about things without even having the opportunity to try them because of those influences. And to be honest with you, myself and probably a lot of other people fell victim to that with this car. And the reason why I say that is, there was a lot of hate when it came out just around the looks of the car and the fact that, it wasn't as exciting as people had expected. They didn't like sort of the shelf in the bumper area that sticks out really far and the plastic cladding. But to be honest with you, when you get in the car and you drive it and you get to see it in the sheet metal, it's not really a deal breaker. It's not something that you would look at and say, oh man, that would drive me crazy. And if it does, at least you would have had a chance to take a look at it in person and form that opinion. I think one of the big challenges is that we tend to form those opinions based on other people's opinions, and we don't always get a chance to get the opportunity to kind of look and feel things and make our own opinion about it before we sort of discount it and don't buy it. And the reason why that's a shame with this car is because it's priced very similarly to, the Hyundai Elantra N, the Civic Si, the Golf GTI. These are sort of the competitors that it's up against, and I think each one of those has its own unique value proposition, and they each do something better and worse than the WRX. And I think it's really important, if you were shopping for something like that, to take the time and just go through each one. Don't just listen to sort of all the reviews of people saying, oh, this car is super ugly and not really exciting. Take the chance to look at it and drive it, because I was surprised. This sort of feels a lot better than I expected getting into it and driving it, and as a car that you can use every day and enjoy with the family, but also sort of go spiritedly, this is not a bad option. So the WRX, it's got relatively similar performance numbers to those cars as well. One of the party pieces of this car is that it also happens to come with all-wheel drive, and you've got the choice between a manual and automatic, which you can't say for the GTI anymore, which only comes in an automatic. And that's something that I feel is really, really important. You want to have a wider audience. You want people to be able to get into this car and enjoy it. And as an enthusiast, even though the technology is not super great and the quality of the materials aren't up to par for what I would like it to be, even though it's relatively normal for a car of its class, and it probably doesn't have the best fuel economy in the world, I really do believe that despite all that, this car deserves a chance. And we don't have a lot of time left with cars like these in existence because everything's moving to be electric or hybrid, and having a somewhat engaging enthusiast type car is going to be a thing of the past. And since we have it, we should take advantage of it and enjoy it. So I hope you found this video insightful and interesting. I really enjoyed making it, and it was fun driving around the WRX for the day, and I've learned a lot about it that I probably didn't expect. I really like the way that it drives. It's very comfortable, it's easy to get along with, and it looks really good in person. Probably doesn't photograph as well, and those minor details of the rear bumper and the plastic cladding, you know, those really are not deal breakers. The driving experience and being able to have a manual transmission and enjoy the all-wheel drive that it's got and the performance that it's got is something that I really appreciate. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I'll catch you in the next one.